This is the next in the Patriot Minute series. I'm Grandpa Rick. We'll talk about the secular progressive message that's in our pop culture today. In the words of Alexander Solzhenitsyn, in fact, warning us of this, he said, "We must not live by lies," but this is exactly what we are doing in this nation. We see this all around us, in fact. We're going to take a look at one example from academia, from Arthur C. Clarke, the great science fiction writer who wrote the short story called The Star. I read this in school when I was a kid, and the message was, at the time I was a little bit unsure of what that message was. I know what it is now, and let's talk about it. Arguably, this science fiction writer, Arthur C. Clarke, is perhaps the most famous science fiction writer of all time, offering the prime example of secular progressive, so-called Enlightenment literature, common in our schools and universities today. The theme of such writing, and this is too often cloaked, attacks the universal Christian message. It denigrates and criticizes God. In fact, Clarke's story shows that God, if he exists at all, cares little for his creations. The things around us in our vast universe, they just happen at random without any plan or purpose. Here we find the classic secular progressive relativist propaganda, though it's offered with a little less subtlety and sophistication than usual, at least what we see in our day. So, let's summarize this classic short story. The Star, as it's titled. A group of space explorers from Earth return from an expedition to a remote star system, where they discover the remnants of an advanced civilization destroyed when its sun went supernova. The group's chief astrophysicist is also a Jesuit priest, and it's obvious from the story early on that he's suffering from some kind of deep crisis of faith, triggered by some undisclosed event that happened during their journey. With further reading, we find that the destroyed planet's culture was similar to Earth's. The people who had lived on the planet, recognizing several generations in advance that their sun would soon explode, and with no means of deep space travel to save themselves. So the doomed people spent their final years building a vault on their outermost planet of their solar system, whose Pluto-like orbit was distant enough from this particular sun, to survive a supernova. In the vault, they placed a complete record of their history, their culture achievements, their religious philosophy, hoping that someday it would be found so that their existence would not have been in vain. In vain. As if that's all there is. So, these Earth explorers, particularly this astrophysicist priest, when stumbling on the vault, were all deeply moved by these artifacts, and they found themselves identifying closely with the dead race's peaceful, human-like, loving culture in the face of their cruel, fiery fate. The final paragraph of the story, The Star, reveals the reason for the priest explorer's deep personal pain. Determining the exact year of the long-ago supernova and the star system's distance from Earth, he calculated the date that the emitted light from the explosion of this star reached Earth, proving that the cataclysm that destroyed this peaceful planet was the same star that heralded the birth of Jesus 2 millennia ago. In the end, the scientist's faith was destroyed because of the apparent jaded and insensitive nature of God. Quote from the story, "Oh God, there were so many stars you could have used. What was the need to give these people to the fire, that the symbol of their passing might shine above Bethlehem?" This is a prime, perhaps classic example of the ongoing secular leftist attack on Christ and Christianity, which permeates our culture today. For me, Clarke's story isn't much of a story, really, because the quality of which I measure in a story by how much redeeming value the creator offers the reader. The story is, however, a harsh political statement. The shock value designed first and foremost to expose God as, quote, heartless, possessing little or no compassion for human suffering these many bloody centuries. After all, quote, it's in God's jaded character to callously wipe out an entire world so that he might provide a light show, a spectacle in the sky, marking the birth of his son. Curiously, Clarke and many on the left, by definition, don't believe there's a God out there anyway. So it seems, from both the atheist all the way to the Christian perspective on this story, and everything in between, that it hardly is worth the ink that it's printed with. One thing I loved about the Star Trek series, which is of course different, the Star Trek series on TV, was that the story always left room for the existence of a benevolent, keenly interested God, and it usually kept its social and political opinions in check. Today, all we get, it seems, are dogmatic messages, self-righteous lectures coming from the morally relativist left. Though Arthur C. Clarke is dead now, from my study of his fascinating life, I think In the back of his mind, he struggled with the possible existence of God, though he told Popular Science magazine in 2004, quote, "Religion is the most malevolent and persistent of all mind viruses. We should get rid of it as quickly as we can," unquote. Then, conversely, in contradiction, he also told an associate that he blamed religion or God for its inability to prevent wars and atrocities over time. Obviously, like many atheists and agnostics, Clarke held an internally conflicted understanding of God, his nature, and his impact upon us lowly human beings. Clarke believed arrogantly, however, that God, if he existed at all, needed to be put in his place. Again, I measure art and stories for our children by their innate ability to inspire and offer hope in an increasingly dark, dangerous, and discouraging world. The stories I place the most value on, in fact, are those that offer a powerful testimony that God lives and Jesus is the Christ. We know that the secular world offers a plethora of negative, degrading, depressing images. Look at the garbage that Hollywood turns out every year. And while I accept the negative as part of life, I, like Paul of Tarsus, seek out the virtuous, lovely, of good report, or praiseworthy first and foremost. Anyway, as we will demonstrate in the writings and videos of the Legacy Generation program, and then in the Patriot Minute series videos that will come, there are multitudes in academia, media, publishing, politics, Hollywood, and now in many major corporations, and even some so-called Christian churches who willingly embrace the themes of the well-known genius Arthur C. Clarke. That, in a nutshell, for me, is the real tragedy, and definitely worth the ink. Thank you for your valuable time. I'm Grandpa Rick.